For the first time ever, a copy of the first draft of the script for Predator 2 is now available to find in the Alien vs Predator Galaxy download section. Thanks to the persuasive power of community member Kane Gilbert T, aka Sonny Bryan, we were able to transcribe images taken of the complete script from the collection of Predator fan Predayan, aka Ian. Before we talk about some of the differences between this first draft and the finished film, I do want to be very clear that this isn't a script containing Dutch. There was never a complete draft of a script for Predator 2 that included Arnold Schwarzenegger's Dutch, but there was a somewhat complete script. Speaking of that early version of Predator 2 to Alien vs Predator Galaxy, Predator 2 director Stephen Hopkins told us that after signing on to direct the film, he was handed a mostly complete 60-page draft of a Predator 2 script that featured both Dutch and Harrigan. That script was never completed, for reasons ranging from the writer's strike in 1988 to Arnold's decision to not do the film, but that's a subject for another video. What we have for you today is the first completed draft of Predator 2, dated October 6th, 1989, featuring Detective Mike Harrigan as the main character. The first major difference in this draft is that it is set entirely in New York, with the opening scene taking place in the notorious Hell's Kitchen. The second draft, dated December 15th, 1989, saw the location changed to Los Angeles as seen in the finished film, along with an opening sequence that plays out the same as in the film. In fact, there's very little actual significant changes from the second draft to the finished film. And rather than the far-flung future of 1997 of the released film, the first draft was set in 1994. The second draft would see the setting pushed forward to 1995, but the 97 date would be settled on by the third draft and remain that way until production. The opening scenes of this first draft are actually quite different. Rather than the in-progress shootout between El Scorpio and his fellow gang members and the police, the first draft finds us observing a weapons deal taking place between Italian weapon dealer Rocco Tanarak and a small number of Colombian drug dealers led by the Scorpion. The deal soon goes south when the Scorpion decides he isn't willing to pay for the merchandise on offer from Rocco. As both the Colombians and the weapon dealers draw their pieces, the Predator who has been observing the deal interrupts in much the same manner as in the finished film, crashing down from the skylights above. When Harrigan and his team arrives, rather than the Scorpion being the sole survivor, it's one of Rocco's bodyguards that surprises Harrigan's squad and is shot off the roof of the building. This is one of those changes that I completely understand. The opening of this film puts the main characters into the actions themselves, making them a part of the story from the very start of the film. Harrigan also doesn't have his fear of heights in this draft. His acrophobia wouldn't become a part of his character until the third draft, which was dated January 16th, 1990. Another bigger change is in the character of Jerry Lambert. In this draft, and the second, he's an Italian detective by the name of Anthony Tony D'Angelo. Rather than an established detective, the Lone Ranger, a name that Harrigan actually uses in reference to the Predator in this draft, Tony's a very green detective, having only just gotten his shield. Describing Tony to his lieutenant, Captain Pilgrim tells Harrigan that Tony cut his teeth in the 38th precinct. His old man was Benny D'Angelo, you remember? South Bronx? He's a good kid, and you've got something in common. 2-time Golden Gloves, middleweight champ. Little green yet, but he's got balls. Keep him alive long enough and you can make him into a good detective. While he's still known as Tony D'Angelo in the second draft, his character essentially becomes the Jerry Lambert as we know him in the finished film. But throughout the drafts, additional dialogue about his background survived all the way from the second draft to the shooting script, and with some minor variations along the way, but doesn't actually appear in the finished film. Danny. So we got a replacement for Leona's partner, Anthony D'Angelo, Billy the Kid of Rampart Station. Harrigan. I know the story. First week on the streets, he walks into 4 heavies taking down a bank. Kid takes them all out, gets a commendation from the mayor herself. Danny, been an ass kicker ever since. Standout arrest record, but got his own style and Vance is an old time captain. Couldn't sign the papers fast enough. Kid actually requested to come here. The penthouse sequence in the first draft also has several changes. The most obvious being it didn't take place in a penthouse. It was set in a squalid, abandoned warehouse where we find Ramon Vega already strung up and the voodoo ritual already taking place. In general, it plays out very similarly as in the finished film, but when the Predator starts to have him some fun, rather than the spear gun, that would make its debut in the second draft, the City Hunter makes use of multiple smaller disc weapons instead. Through the room, a blur of movement, now behind them, a Jamaican spinning around to fire, two gleaming discs the size of silver dollars thudding into his chest, a third sticking in his forehead. Now your first thought might be, whoa, what about the smart disc? Are these an alternative? No, the smart disc does make an appearance later, being introduced as Harrigan is chasing the City Hunter along the rooftops after the slaughterhouse sequence. The first draft describes the weapon as the ancient fighting weapon of his race, the flying disc. 10 inches in diameter, a tapered disc of patined metal, engraved in strange runes. The edge of the disc a gleaming razor edge. The Predator's fingers slip into the dished out section, perfectly moulded to fit his hand. His fingers sink home, his fist closing, the weapon charging to life, a high-pitched whine as the edge begins to glow red fire. The disc would later be named the Smart Weapon by the third draft, but would not be the instrument used to deliver the killing blow to Peter Keyes until the shooting script. The description of being an ancient fighting weapon was also dropped in the subsequent drafts. Unlike the finished Predator 2, the Jamaican gang doesn't burst in on Ramon Vega in the throes of passion with Terry Weigel, nor does it leave her the sole traumatised survivor. In this first draft of Predator 2, Ramon Vega is left as the survivor. This is another change I can understand, wanting to leave you caring about the survivor. Perhaps the leader of a drug cartel wasn't the kind of characters that the powers that be thought would elicit that kind of sympathetic emotion. With the absence of the spear gun during the sequence, it obviously wasn't the spear tip that would draw Danny's attention when he returned to the crime scene. In this first complete incarnation of Predator 2 script, it was actually a golden St. Christopher's medallion that glinted in the light to draw Danny's interest. Cautiously, he makes his way to the location of the nail. Lowering himself carefully onto one knee, he reaches down, grasping something. He opens his hand, revealing a gold St. Christopher's medal. Puzzled, he rolls it over, finding an inscription in Italian on the back, the name Rocco, clearly readable. This medal belonged to Rocco, the weapon dealer from the original opening sequence. With the removal of the weapon deal in the next draft, the character of Rocco was also lost. So instead, in the second draft, it would become a golden scorpion necklace that belonged to, you guessed it, El Scorpio. By the third draft, it was the City Hunter spear tip we would come to know and love. But with no spear tip to put under the microscope, medical examiner and chief pathologist, in this draft an older man named James Arnold, instead discovers an unusual substance in Danny's wounds, a substance that Harrigan likens to honing oil on the Predator's wrist blades. Arnold, what you're seeing is not oil, but metal. Harrigan, liquid metal, like mercury? Arnold, wrong atomic weight. This stuff doesn't correspond to anything on the periodic table. I don't know what the hell it is, but I'd say the only people with access to something like this would be the military or the government. While we still meet Leona's husband in this draft of Predator 2, her pregnancy is now entirely absent. Instead of being spared by the City Hunter as he discovers the developing fetus within her, Leona dies not long after Tony during the City Hunter's subway attack when she turns back to help him. Harrigan no longer sees the Predator in the subway tunnel or chases after him. Instead, there's a rather out-of-place car chase sequence where Harrigan steals a police car and tears through the city to the slaughterhouse that Harrigan's squad had previously investigated in the thoughts that the Predator was actually a human working there. While racing through the streets of New York, Harrigan crashes into a pickup truck that then gives chase in an attempt to. Citizens arrest him for his dangerous driving. In a blind rage too focused on avenging Leona and Tony, Harrigan shoots out one of the pickup's tyres, causing them to crash right into a police precinct. The truck powers sideways a moment through an intersection before gaining traction, now heading across the street directly towards a set of concrete stairs. Interior, pickup truck, night. As it powers up the stairs, the three men see a set of double doors looming towards them, gold letters reading 42nd Precinct, NYPD. Exterior, precinct house, night. The truck rockets through the front doors. Interior, precinct house, night. Coming to rest in the desk area of the station. As the falling debris and dust settles, the Bulldog desk sergeant, flanked by half-dozen officers, rises up over the booking desk, levelling their weapons at the three poleaxed rednecks. This is another one of those changes I completely understand. As with the rewritten opening sequence, having Harrigan chase the Predator in the film puts him more directly into the Predator action without the need for this random chase sequence to just add extra action into the film. The reckless driving also shines Harrigan in a poor light that the drivers of being rednecks doesn't quite alleviate. Over the course of writing, there were a number of additional details about the Otherworld Lifeform organisation and their investigations around the Predator that would be dropped from the film that ended up on the big screen. In the first draft, Keyes tells Harrigan that the O.W.L.F has been around for 30 years, but the Predators are the first solid lead they've found into their investigation into extraterrestrial life so far. Keyes, quietly. That's right, Lieutenant. An O.W.L.F, otherworldly life form. In our 30 years of investigation into thousands of reported otherworldly encounters, the incidents in Central America and now here are the only verifiable contacts between human beings and members of an alien species. The incredibly memorable sequence that is the City Hunter crashing into the apartment of Ruth and Herb and being pursued by Harrigan as he's told the City Hunter probably doesn't give a shit that he's a cop is also slightly different. The City Hunter doesn't crash through the window for a start, but the more interesting deviation here is that the first draft has a notation that doesn't exist in any of the subsequent drafts. Jim and John Thomas had noted in their script that the character of Ruth should be played by well-known actor Billy Crystal. At this point in his career, Billy Crystal would have just starred in the iconic When Harry Met Sally and had been enjoying a very successful career up until this point. Why the writing duo thought Billy Crystal would be a good choice for this role, I couldn't tell you. At this point, it's probably pretty well known that there was an alternate death sequence for the City Hunter in Predator 2 that was never filmed. For those who might not be aware, as the lost Predators decloak, with the last of his strength, the dying City Hunter offers his throat to the greyback Predator, who then promptly severed the younger Predator's head. While this scene would survive from the second draft all the way to the shooting script, even if it wasn't actually filmed, the first draft instead has the dying City Hunter carried into the depths of the ship. However, before the City Hunter was to meet his rather anticlimactic fate in this first draft, the lead up to the finished battle plays out somewhat differently. Rather than the exciting climax taking place in the unique interior of the Predator ship, it actually took place in the basement of Ruth's apartment block. Much of the choreography is described the same, but there were some changes. The fight actually ends when the City Hunter ruptures a boiler after Harrigan dodges an attack. The City Hunter, having already been cut across the abdomen by Harrigan's recovered smart disc, retreats with incredible wounds from the steam and boiling water, disappearing through a holographic wall in an attempt to reach his ship. Harrigan seems mesmerised, frozen as with an awesome lunge, the Predator makes a vicious killing stroke with the knives, Harrigan waiting until the last possible second before he dives. The killing knives slashing into the boiler, opening a huge gash, a massive explosion of boiling water and steam blasting onto the predator. He screams as his flesh turns red, parboiled in the deadly flow. Still screaming, he turns, disappearing into the cloud of steam. Harrigan gets to his feet, seeing a fire axe clipped to a wall next to a hose and reel. He yanks the axe from the wall, stumbling through the steam and into the room beyond, but there is no sign of the predator. He has vanished. Harrigan follows the glowing blood trail to a brick wall where it abruptly ends. Enraged, Harrigan swings the axe at the wall, but instead of the brick, he hits empty space, Harrigan and the axe vanishing into the wall. Harrigan gives chase to find the city hunter, having collapsed outside the predator's ship, unable to make it back to the rest of his clan. As Harrigan prepares to finish off the extraterrestrial hunter that has been tormenting him and killed so many of the people around him, the lost predators decloak, and the script plays out very similarly to the finished film. To Harrigan's right, he sees the awesome sight of the predator's scarred and battered spacecraft, aged with meteor hits, burns and space dust. Behind it, Harrigan sees an ovoid shaft fused into the earth, the path of the ship's entryway into the abandoned subway. Mesmerised, Harrigan approaches the ship, walking beside it. He reaches out, running his hand over the strange metal. As he does, his hand cuts a beam, a section of the ship's skin hissing open, revealing a wall of gel-like modules. At the corner of each module is a small disc, like a button. Harrigan touches one of the discs, a block of gel sliding forward soundlessly. He stares into the gel, where entombed in the preservative are 3 human skulls, vertebrae attached. Goldtooth, Danny, and King Willie. Dreadlocks still visible. At the top of the diamond-shaped arrangement is an empty space. Harrigan touches the surface of the gel. Danny. Behind him, he hears a noise. Turning, his mind raging with anger, he staggers back towards the entrance, where behind a pile of rubble, he finds the dying predator, lying on his side, burned and bleeding, taking his last breath, unable to make the safety of his ship. Another major change between this first draft of Predator 2 and the finished film is that the character of Garber didn't exist, and Peter Keyes actually survived to the end. In both this first draft and the second draft, Peter Keyes is not a part of the actual unit attempting to capture the city hunter in the slaughterhouse, and doesn't intervene to save Harrigan, as he simply isn't in there. Instead, he has the role and much of the dialogue of Garber during that sequence, and appears at the end of the film as the lost predator's ship departs. By the mound, standing alone is Keyes. Harrigan walks up, Keyes turning to look at him, dumbfounded, incredulous to see Harrigan alive, but seeming more heartbroken than anything. We came so close. And there are other differences, of course. Differences such as the city hunter's more obvious stalking and tormenting of Harrigan that persisted from this first draft through to subsequent drafts, and even into Stephen Hawke's novelisation of Predator 2. These are just the ones I thought were more interesting or significant when compared to the finished Predator 2 that we all know and love. To read the complete script for yourself, you can head on over to our download section, where you will also find the second and third drafts along with one of the later shooting scripts. Hello everybody, this is Aaron, aka Corporal Hicks, and if you've made it this far into the video, thank you for watching. If you're a returning subscriber, an existing subscriber, thanks for the continued support. And if you're new to the channel, make sure after this is done, I encourage you to head back to the main page and check out some of our other content. You know, we've got a load of stuff for you to enjoy. Other editorial pieces like this one, there's lore pieces, weekly live streams that we do playing the various Alien and Predator games, as well as some organised Let's Plays, and of course video versions of our podcasts. So there's bound to be something for you, so head on back, check it out, and if you like what you see, please do give us a like on the videos and subscribe to the channel, and what's the other, hit the notification button so you get notified of new content. I do hate doing all that stuff, but we have to. And if you have any questions or comments, do post them up. We do like engaging with you guys and girls out there, and it's always fun to hear from you. So please do get in touch if you have anything to say. I hope everybody's enjoyed this one. This took some hard work to put together, mostly when it came to transcribing and formatting the script. So I'm going to pat myself on the back for that one. And of course, I'd just like to thank Ian as well for taking the time to take photos of every single page of the script. Some were unfortunately a little blurry, so it did take a bit of squinting while I was doing the typing. But it came out well, I do think. If you are one of those fans that does like to read the scripts, there's a link to the download section in the description below. Head on over there, you'll find every Alien and Predator script that we were able to get our grubby mitts on, and they're all uploaded there for you to read. As I touched on in this video, the version of Predator 2 with Dutch in it doesn't really exist. There's a 60-page thing that's apparently out there, and when we had the chance to speak to Predator 2 director Stephen Hopkins, we asked him about it, and he told us bits and pieces about it. So I do intend to do a video and an article covering that topic. So if that's something you're interested in, do keep an eye on us, because I'll be up at some point. It's on the list. I don't know when I'm going to get to it because lots of stuff's on the list. There's a lot of things Adam and I want to talk about when it comes to Alien and Predator. So do make sure you're checking in. And if you're on any of the socials, you can follow us on Twitter or Facebook or Instagram. We're at AVP Galaxy or Alien vs Predator Galaxy versus as in VS Dot. We're also on Hive now. That's AVP Galaxy as well. And if you like old school organised discussions, we have a message board which you can find on the hub of our activity on avpgalaxy.net, which is where you'll find written versions of our content on here as well. Well, our editorial and our lore pieces, and our interviews as well. Darkness has transcribed a lot of those as well, so they're available for reading. And that's also where we post the news. The latest news as it's coming out. It's all up on the front page of avpgalaxy.net. Right, I hope everybody's enjoyed, and thank you very much for watching.